We're live.
Are we? Wait,
I,
en vivo. No, what'd you say? Estamos al aire, ¿no?
estamos
Okay.
al aire, on
Yeah.
air.
Yeah. Okay.
How's it going, man?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good, good. Just trying to kind of enjoying the spring. Like it's supposed to be hot here, and we woke up in the last couple of days close to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like close to zero, which doesn't make sense at all.
Wait,
And it's
wait,
cloudy
35
and it's
degrees
cold.
Fahrenheit.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
dude, that
cold.
what?
I don't know. The high was 57 for my Celsius friends. That's like 17, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
It's cold. So, but other than that, it's all good. How about
yeah.
you?
California's got funny weather, man. It's been beautiful here in Florida. It's been awesome. It's like in the 80s, no humidity. It's like my favorite type of kind of weather where it's hot, but it's
Mm-hmm.
there's very little humidity and there's a nice like wind coming from the ocean. It's like my favorite time of year, really.
Yeah, the humidity is what we don't get here. It's dry heat, which I like compared to humid. I'm not into that. All right, so let's talk about a few things that we have seen over the web in the last few days since our last episode. And then today is a little bit different in the sense that we don't have an actual friction log, but we're following up on a subject that you mentioned, I think, in the last episode. We're open sourcing our friction log website,
Yeah.
and we're
So the
making it
friction log
available.
is the friction log.
Yes, the friction log is about the friction log website,
Yeah.
which was a fun experience, I gotta say. But before we get into that, let's talk about a few things you sent me during the week. Preview JS. That
Yeah,
is
I really want to do
previewjs.com.
I really want to do a friction log on this because it's really interesting. Clearly it's for like framework makers and component builders and stuff. So because if you follow the Tailwind folks, Tailwind CSS and stuff, they have like their own thing that they built so that when they make a component, I think it's Tailwind, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's for React, it's for Vue, it's for whatever. And so they make it in this generic thing and then it compiles to those. So I looked at the stack and what they do to build that. So I think Preview.js is kind of like an answer to that. It's trying to solve that problem for everybody. So it looks interesting. So you write it in this like abstract way of writing a component and then it builds a Vue component and a React component, right?
Yes. So it is for Vue and React. And I guess what I like is that it gives you the necessary context to build components, right? It's mainly for, I guess, UI components for the most part, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
because it has the HTML and CSS and all of that in there, or the TSX. But it gives you that context where you can properly isolate what you want that component to be, what reusable component to be. Is it a button? Is it a radio? Is it a drop down? And that I like it because you have to think about the input. You have to think about the event propagating, right? If that triggers something, and it just puts you on the right context. And the fact that it is right there on VS Code, I think it's pretty nice. 575 stars in GitHub, and a friction log will be coming soon. I think it's gonna bump up the list, so that's fun. What else? Keystone JS. That's the next one. What is Keystone JS?
So real quick, let me back up just to correct myself. Maybe I misunderstood this, and I'm
Huh.
confusing it with another thing. This looks like a storybook type setup, but it's in your VS Code. Maybe
That's
that's
what
what
I
it is.
am looking at. Previous JS. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I misunderstood. So that's my bad for misunderstanding Preview.js. Maybe it's something else I'm thinking of. Anyway, um, it does look interesting. I still want to try it out though because I like the idea of it being in VS Code like that. That's curious. Keystone is a CMS. Um, it used to be back in the day, I think, built on Mongo, and I think it had its own like object, its own ORM, but now it's built on Prism and it's Postgres that it's built on top of. But it's pretty cool. It's like one of those things where in code you define this is the page list view, this is the page detail view, this is the type of values that get entered in, and it generates those pages for you. So it's like a quick way to generate an admin on top of like a Postgres database. Looks really cool. I actually have like a little side project that I'm wanting to work on, which is like a news aggregator where you point the aggregator to a website that doesn't have an RSS feed, and it can extract the metadata, whether it's Open Graph or whatever they use. And if it does have an RSS feed, then it extracts the RSS stuff. So then it aggregates all that. You auto tag things. You kind of like provide these are the tags I care about, or these are the things. And then when it does the extraction part, it'll do that. So I need like a CMS so that someone can like enter in those links and the websites and stuff like that. So I'm thinking about using Keystone for it. So that'll be a friction log at some point this year. We'll have. It looks really cool though. I'm
I gotta
impressed.
ask. So so it generates all of that for you, and then it has your Postgres. Okay, that's pretty cool actually. It's like your admin for a CMS or for things like that. So it's 100% TypeScript. Okay, I have an interesting question for you.
Okay.
I see this Keystone 6, and then the first thing that I see is obviously how to create an app, and they use Yarn create Keystone app as opposed to, I guess, npm whatever command, or npx, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like, do you have different reactions when you see a tool that uses Yarn versus npm? I know it's the same, but what do you feel?
No, it's actually an interesting question, because literally the first thing I felt was, it's like you read my mind, Cesar. Come on, man. Literally when I was trying it out over this weekend, I was like, well, where's the npm or npx command? I don't want this Yarn thing. I get it. Like we can talk about Yarn forever, but it's just I don't like to use it for whatever stupid reason. So I'm instantly like, why is that the first thing it's showing me? That's literally the sentiment I had when I saw it. Yeah.
It happens to me. I think I have a couple of projects where I start them with Yarn, and I think they're just like that. One of them being um, my blog where I put some of the cloud stuff, and I hate it. And again, it's probably faster, and there are pros and cons. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of preference. Kind of like Cocoa Pods versus Swift Package Manager versus what was the other one? Carthage. That was the other one
Oh
on
yeah.
iOS.
Carthage, right? Yeah.
So
I
it's
forgot
all a
about
matter
that.
of preference, but at some point you want to, like, I feel like I don't want to invest the time in specializing into something like Yarn, which is just tooling, where the rest or the majority of the node ecosystem stays on npm. It's like, why would I like just save a couple of seconds? That doesn't make sense. But I found it interesting. I saw Yarn create, and I was like, you're like, it to me this strikes as the developers that build this are opinionated enough to put Yarn as opposed to npm or npx, which is interesting. Not bad, not good. It's just, it always makes me think about the people who are behind that.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
good
that's
that
fair.
I'm
Like, why your point is, why lead with that if that's not the majority use case? Which I actually don't even know what the percentage is. Um, I'm assuming npm's way bigger than Yarn as far as usage goes, but because I mean there is advantages with Yarn and how it does like the parallel installations and all that stuff, but if you're building docs and stuff, why would you lead with something that isn't the norm? That's a good question. Yeah.
Yep. It just talks to me that they have an opinion, and it's good that they put it out there. But at the same time, I'm like, do you? I don't know. Do you care more about Yarn or your product? Like, because if you care about your product, you will probably put both not just one. I don't know. It's hard.
Right.
Nothing against Yarn, just like you, I don't use it. I don't like it. All right. So Keystone, that should be fun. So you are building a news aggregator. So you're basically rebuilding Google. What was it? Google Reader.
Not really, but yeah, right. Rest in peace. Rest in
The
pieces.
old is new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
The one interesting thing with Keystone that is attractive too is because it's built now on Prism, and it's got that ORM layer, it's got the migrations, and it's got that like native feel of Prism and just managing databases that way. So it's almost like you can use that as the way to manage your database and the structure and all that, even if it's out of band from
Mhm.
how you're going to use it. Because now this is like your system of record, and the UI on top of your system of record, or a UI, an admin UI on top of it. But out of band, you have this graph API that it generates so that you can have internal systems or whatever communicate with it that way. And then, somewhere else you can have like a consumer layer, that API layer that interacts with it or interacts with something else that interacts with it. So it's interesting. It seems like it would give you enough flexibility to do what you need to do, and scale where you need to scale, but we'll see. We'll play around with it and see what it does.
Yeah, it's just a generic system that administers data, and you define it by code. And yeah, I can see I can see a lot of good things here. Here's another thing that I noticed: they spell personalized support with S as opposed to Z, which means it's probably out of the UK.
Yeah, I want to say, for some reason I want to say Australia.
Or Australia.
But
Yeah.
I don't know why. I want to say back in the day when it was, whenever they started out, I want to say I watched some videos, and probably if the person who ever started that is listening to me and they're like a Kiwi from New Zealand, or they'd be like, "Oh, what are you talking about? I'm from Tasmania or whatever." Yeah, but I don't know. So, somewhere down there, I
Yeah,
think.
but they do not spell with Z things like personalized or organizations. It's with S, and that's
Yeah.
always interesting too. Talks
Right.
about many things. Okay, good. All right. Well, let me know how it goes. We can always come back, and once we have a friction log published, we can talk about it. Keystone 6 at keystonejs.com. All right. The next one, I brought it up, I think, in one of the newsletters that I get. Rome, ROME. It is, this is an interesting package because
Yeah, it
it
is.
sounds pretty cool. At the same time, it sounds that it is trying to do too much. I
Mm,
have seen it in the
interesting.
news more than once. I think I first heard of it at the end of last year.
Hmm.
But I'm just gonna read from the website so I don't miss anything. Rome is a formatter, linter, bundler, and more for JavaScript, TypeScript, JSON, HTML, Markdown, and CSS. And it's designed to replace Babel, ESLint,
Yeah.
Webpack, Prettier, Jest, and others. Like,
Oh, wait. That's what it says on the website. All of those.
yes,
Oh, wow, that is quite ambitious.
yeah. And it's funny because they make a joke out of like, well, Rome wasn't built on one
In
day,
a
so they
day.
start with the first release. Yeah, so it's like they start with the first release, which is the formatter, which is the prettier replacement,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
And out of like it's faster, obviously, ESLint, Webpack, TypeScript, but it's just like the beginning of it. And
Hmm.
it also, I think it's nice that it tries to do the formatting, even though you may have some syntax errors in your code. So it will try to make it prettier, even if it doesn't parse
Hmm.
correctly, which I
Hmm.
know Prettier fails at some of that. But it's
Hmm.
one of those things that either becomes the next big thing, or it's
Yeah.
just
Right.
gonna fail miserably because he tried to do too much too soon. So
Yeah. Or they figure out they need to make it modular, or maybe it's built that way already. Who knows? For
mhm.
multiple repos or something. Yeah. That's interesting. And it's written in Rust, right? I think I remember
Yeah,
seeing that. Yeah. So
that's
is
why it's
this?
fast.
I feel like, at least with the tools, it's like, the mantra whatever can be written in JavaScript will be. This is like whatever JavaScript tool can be written in Rust will be. I kind of feel like that's where things are going.
Yeah, some of the tooling from Vercel is actually being rebuilt in Rust, right? I think
Yeah,
in last
very
conference
impressive.
they mentioned, and it's
Yeah, it's very
fast and
impressive.
everybody likes it. But yeah, so that's the one that I have. First release formatter. I don't know. I might try it out, um, just for fun, see how different it is. But I feel like it's gonna have a bunch of conflicts with the other things that it's trying to replace. So I don't know. Well, maybe we'll see. And the next one, which it's a good candidate for a friction log and maybe even a live friction log, is Git Live. Git Live.
Yeah,
Um,
Git.live. Yeah.
Git.live is the web
I,
page. Yeah.
I don't. I never heard of it before until this past week, and
Hmm.
I don't know how long it's been around, but I'm kind of surprised I've never heard of it because the promise is amazing. Um, and I installed it really quick, and sure enough, now it's just me in the one repo I installed it on, but you can see like what you're working on, and it shows all the PRs that I have open, and it has all the stuff. So you can see all your teammates, all their PRs. You can see all the files that they're working on that they have in flight. It's kind of impressive. Yeah, I'm impressed with it.
Bunch of integrations like Jira, Trello, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, GitHub, obviously. And that's the premise, right? The premise is that you are able to see other people local changes, right? As opposed to just whatever they push to the repo. You are all connected, and you can see the moment somebody's going to have a conflict, you can resolve it even before two pull requests get created, right? Or you're trying to put and merge.
Yeah, it's pretty
Um,
sick. I mean,
yeah,
it's super impressive, and it's not just that; it's also the issues too. So it shows you that hey, so and so just checked this out, and like that's the issue, and then boom, there's the PR or there's the code that he's actually just coding right now, and you can, like you said, pull it in. It's pretty impressive. Idea, vision.
yep, it's interesting. They have a feature around like you can call each other. I guess you can do like a Zoom or something where you can meet with the peer. The free plan has 40 minutes. Organizations has 4 hours. Blah blah blah. Merge detection, social coding and issue tracking, group calls with code share and support. Interesting. Definitely another one of those things that they just come up and it's already built. Like you would expect it to be in an early beta, for
Yeah.
you to be the first time that you heard about it, and
Hmm.
that's also my experience as well. All right, another good candidate. We'll come back to them in future episodes. Let's talk about open sourcing Friction Log website.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this is so I wrote the revision to Friction Log over Christmas break or something like that, redid the site. And so then you took it and open sourced it. So really the Friction Log should be more like, hey Cesar, what was the friction log with working with Rick's code? That probably should be the friction log. What were the blockers? Were there any
Well,
delights at all? Probably not. Um,
I have one. I have one delight.
oh, one. Okay, great.
Well, it's just there's not a lot of code, like quantity based, right? But at the same time, that's also what I like because I think I mentioned it on the previous episode where I have a blog that I created before Next.js became what it is right now. So I created in Gatsby JS,
Oh yeah,
and
right. Hmm.
it's just it takes so long to build and it has so many dependencies, and it's
Yeah.
one of those templates that I'm using for some cloud notes that I try to just put out there, reference to other people's fixes and stuff like that, so
Right.
things about Kubernetes and stuff like that. So I have been trying to get out of that one, and coming from there, into the source code, right, of the website, um, it's like refreshing because our website has the very minimum to support what our needs are. And I think the idea is also coming from the sense that, hey, we built something that it is fast. We use it ourselves. Why not let other people use it? Because there are not a lot of, I guess, blog slash podcast admin kind of template in Next.js out there that people just go and grab. So I think that's one of the reasons why. And I mean, at some point, somebody has to see your code other than me. So
No,
we'll see
no,
what people think
please,
about it.
no, don't look at it.
So we're gonna put the link on the website as well as on the show notes. But the idea of this process that didn't really take that long, I just didn't have a lot of time to work on it, was grabbing a copy of our code, removing anything specific to friction lock, try to do some improvements in like make it easier to customize for people, and then just release it. Right. So,
Right.
which total time spent was probably like, I don't know, 3, 4 hours maybe. So it wasn't
Hmm.
bad at all.
Hmm.
It was actually good. So, talk to me about some of the features that we have there, right? We have dark mode. How does it work? Did you try it on mobile when you were building it? Um, Anything around like compliance? Like, do you remember any of those topics?
Man, Cesar, that was more than 5 minutes ago. So no, I don't remember any of that. No. Well, I know like when I did do it over the Christmas break, I'm pretty sure it was Christmas break. The um just working with Next.js with the markdown, the MDX stuff and all that. It's just such a delight. I just remember that going, oh, this is so much easier than all these other ways to do it. Um, it's kind of like a meme now, like, oh, what's a developer going to do? He's going to spend all his time rewriting his blog in Next.js and all that. So, it's kind of a joke and I get it, but there really is something nice about working with it. And I will say, as far as fish rules goes, we use fish rules like as an app that's built on Next.js and all that kind of stuff. And from a professional perspective, it's a delight. But then even when you're working on hobby stuff or side things or little, smaller scope things like this, it's still a delight. It's great, which is neat, right? It's it's
Yeah,
it's nice to be able to use the thing that you're doing on the side and the thing you do professionally, and it all jives and has good value props across the board.
I agree. You mentioned MDX. So MDX, for the people that don't know, is a way to do markdown. That's your primarily content, but then you can also embed JavaScript components or TSX components into it. So you
Right.
can do this mix between just text that you're writing your blog post, but you can also put just components like a YouTube player or like a tweet viewer or even custom components like a tag or something and it just works. Which I think it's great. Like it's I gotta say, first time I saw it, I didn't really see the value of it because I just wanted to write some text. And I think that goes back to my Gatsby blog. Um, but now it's like, okay, so I can add things like, for example, in our episodes, anybody that has seen the website that we always have the buttons for like, hey, listen in Apple Podcast or Spotify or Overcast, which is what I use for podcasts, right?
Hmm.
And now we can reuse that piece across all the blog posts, which also can be taken into the bad stuff. Like if you are trying to make ads, then it's like you're gonna be able to add like ads really easy to all your blog posts. But like especially those that are in between paragraphs, which I hate. But
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know. So okay, so MDX definitely was a quick project. It's not a lot of quantity of code, but it does have value. You made it dark mode ready, so depending on your system settings, it will use dark mode. I don't think we have a button right now to manually trigger it. which
We
is
don't.
interesting.
Yeah, we don't. It
Um,
was just kind of like, let's use the Tailwind stuff out of the box, and
mhm.
there's no. It's actually pretty easy to implement, and you just switch a global tag or a global CSS, property or whatever on the body or something like that. It's pretty easy,
Yep.
but yeah.
Okay, so what else can I tell you about that? It is using Next version 12 as of right now, 12.0.0. It is using Tailwind, as we said, and Tailwind version. What version are we using of Tailwind? 2.2.16. So that includes the JIT compiler. So it's pretty recent. We'll try to keep it updated, and of course, any issues you can report it directly on GitHub. So I think we talk about the why, right? Or like how we were able to do this process. The why is more about I didn't see any Next.js templates when I was looking for a replacement that I really like. There are a couple ones. There's even one that has Tailwind in it, and it comes from Tailwind and some of that. So, but there is like our website. Credit to you, it's pretty. I like it. So I was like, why don't we just make this available for other people? The next question will be: is it ready for anybody to use? Yes, it is. The README instructions include things that you need to modify to the best of our abilities that we recollect, but we're also going to use it ourselves. I'm going to move that blog in, and then anything we'll try to improve it. And like any good open source project, make sure that you update, that you test it before you deploy, right? What
Nah,
else?
who needs to do that?
Yeah, that's why we put the deploy to Vercel button, so you can just deploy it. Which I think it's actually it was super simple to add, and it's one of those things, those delights out of Vercel that is like
hmm
just click here, and it's gonna grab that open source repo, and it's gonna allow you to create a fork in your GitHub, and then automatically deploy. And I
Yep.
mean, it doesn't get easier than that, right?
Yep. Yep.
We don't have any release right now. We just have the initial commit that happened earlier today, and we will see where this goes. I have I have a couple of features that we can add, and maybe it's worth mentioning them or not. It's not a promise that we will add them, but do you have anything in mind of what can we add to this that we don't
Well,
have
there's
already?
there's some basic things like we don't have pagination on that. It's just I think if you want to see all the posts, it's just literally a list of all the posts, which is fine. A lot of sites do that, but at some point we probably should have some kind of pagination, a better search. Is another one.
Mhm.
Um,
I
yeah.
think we used to use Algolia on the previous version of the website,
hmm
so maybe
You
it
just
would
re-add
be
that.
good to
Yeah, I
yeah.
didn't move that over on this new one, but I mean,
Hmm.
Algolia is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep. So pagination, search, color theming as well. Right now, it's the coloring that we have. Yes, we have light and dark mode, but we don't really have any ability to customize color. You will have to go through the different Tailwind CSS files. And then the other one, I do maintain a couple of blogs in Spanish, so it might be good to explore what will it mean to have some sort of internationalization on it. So those are some of the things that we have. Um, GitHub issues are available. Anything that if you like that template and you want to see something, raise an issue. We will take a look. It generates RSS feeds. We have two RSS feeds out of our website. One is your typical RSS feed for whatever you use to read news. Um, in the future, whatever Rick is going to build in Keystone JS. And then it also generates an RSS feed that it is compatible with iTunes, right, and Spotify. So if you are making a podcast by yourself, you can definitely use this template, and it will get you a head start on the website, right? I know there are a bunch of tools that are out of the box, but this is what we use. So happy to share that. All right. Any questions that you may have for me?
So how long did it take you to take the existing thing and then like make it to where it's open source? I'm just curious.
So I think end to end, I did like 4 hours maybe,
Hmm.
uh, which was like maybe 3 sessions, couple of 1 hour sessions, and then one of 2 hours.
Hmm.
So it wasn't that much. It was just
Yeah. Right.
go through every single file, and then, well, basically I started by creating a copy of our repo, right, removing
Mhm.
the git folder so we don't bring all that history in. We didn't have any keys or anything very
Right.
unique, I would say, so we were thumbs up on that for us. um, we use Plausible Analytics. We use Mailchimp for email subscription. So it was a couple of things to make sure that we call it out for somebody that wants to use it, and then it was just going through each of the files and making sure that there was no reference to just friction log as itself, and if there was any, then tell you how to modify it for your own convenience, right? Whenever you want to put your brand there. So that's the actual work. The
Hmm.
thinking process of it was more interested. And I think it took me almost like 4 hours total as well, right? So I'll look at something and then I will start thinking, I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do with this? We're going to publish it as an open source repo. And then are we going to fork it ourselves? Are we going to keep our private repo with all the content? Like, what are we going to do there? And then how do you make changes on the fork, whether that's the Friction Lock website or my personal website or any other website, anybody that wants to contribute, especially around the part of the content, right? Because we have
Hmm.
content that it is sampled for different categories, but now you that mind switch of like, okay, how do I make this reusable? How do I make this so it works for at least two of our websites, right?
Hmm.
They're all
Right.
going to look similar, but at the same time I want him to I do want to spend time trying to do this, because I gotta say this would be my first open source project that I'm gonna try to maintain, right? So other than a few libraries here and there and sample codes, I do want this to be something that somebody can go ahead and deploy it and then maybe tell us about it, and we'll put a reference on that repo.
Right. Right. Cool. All right. Awesome. And then what we're going to end up basing friction log off of it too. So we got to do that little bit of work. And then I'm assuming, like anything, we're going to start running into, oh, we probably need to add this as environment variables or some kind of config thing. That's always what ends up happening when you start doing these kind of website boilerplate things. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome, man.
um
Good job.
I think, if anything, the hardest part of the migration was, or not the migration, but the copying and the scraping and all of that, was not thinking about what's coming up next. Just get it out there, share it. It doesn't matter that it has 5 stars, right? Just get to the front door and ship something, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to try to have this perfect template where you can customize colors and
Mhm. Right.
language and themes and all of that. That is the hardest part, because more than once I was like, oh, let me change this and let me do this. No, we should probably fix that. And I'm like, no, this is going to take more time than what we really want to spend on it, and we don't even know if it's gonna work. We have a couple of use cases ourselves, so
Right.
not worrying too much about it being completed was the challenge, and I am proud to say that it's out there. So it means that I succeed.
Right. Good. That's good. And that's a good attitude to have always.
Yeah.
The key is with iteration is if you set out with the idea that, look, I'm going to do this and I'm going to iterate on it, then you have to follow through with it, right? Because you can't. There's two pitfalls. The first one is not setting out that way. It's like I got to build this all perfect. So obviously we know that's always a disaster in software. Not always, most of the time.
Mhm.
The other pitfall is kind of deceiving yourself and saying, well, I want to iterate fast, blah 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 blah, and it still takes you a little too long, and so then you release it longer than what you planned on doing, and then especially when you're building products that users actually are using that you need to get user feedback on, it takes you too long to get the user feedback, and a lot of times it's better just to get the feedback with bugs in it or with something that's incomplete than to wait until it's like, I know I'm not going to get bad feedback on this now because it checks these boxes. A lot of times it's better just to get the bad feedback.
Yeah, I agree. I think by the time that you release something that has gone through that process, you're already tired, and any feedback will irritate you, and it will probably not be good feedback either, right? Because
Right.
you're thinking ahead. And as when you start, then you're like, hey, this is out there. Maybe people will use it, maybe not, but at least I have a use case myself, and I'm going to try to push it and to be better. Eventually, people notice, and maybe it will help somebody, right? So, yes, I couldn't put it in better words than what you just did.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I love it. I'm looking forward to improving it and working on it. It's awesome.
Yeah, likewise. Did you see that there was I think it was a Twitter thread or something that I saw, like how Twitter implemented the undo feature,
No.
like
Oh,
undo for
yes.
tweets?
Yes, 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 yes. It was like, I like, for lack of a better term, a set timeout, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a timer, and if you close the app, it just blew the timer up.
Yep. That was
Amazing. I love it.
th
That was actually one of my favorite stories. That was what, last week or 2 weeks
I
ago?
think so.
Somebody I love that so much because it's just the scrappy nature of it. Because there's like the opposite side, which is like the solution architect person, which we've both had that role. It's like, oh, we have to do this and do this. We got to think about this and think about this and da 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 da. And yeah, Twitter peeps are like, yeah, I just put a timeout and whatever.
Yeah. They don't release a lot of features, but when they do, it's like in that hacky way, and you're
Oh,
like,
I love
"Yeah,
it.
that makes sense." So,
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it when they said that. I'm like, oh, that's so great.
and I think it's just a good example of us, right? Trying to do the same, trying to just get it out there, and we will improve it whenever it needs improvement, and we will make it better based on our use cases and based on feedback. But right now, it's a set timeout.
That's great.
All right, man. Well, thank you for building the code originally during the Christmas break and your help through the migration. I definitely have a good time. I think there's work to do. We'll be back on the next episode with some friction logs of some of the things that we told. But for today, I think that's it.
Cool. All right. Thanks for fixing it all.
Anytime, my friend.
All
I'll
right,
catch
man.
up with you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, sounds good. See ya. Bye.
All right.